athletes, and that's what propels us, that even if we get overlooked, even if we aren't at the level of where other people are seeing the other teams and the other members of these teams on the world stage, that we will get there one day, and we will 100% will get there one day, because we'll wake up and we'll go to work every single day and we'll do what needs to be done to do it.
Hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Mayn Idea Podcast, where today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Dante Leon. A quick note on rash guards. For those of you that placed an order, they are in production and they should be shipping to me soon. So keep an eye out for a package coming from Mayn Idea Podcast. Once you wear them, please tag me in your videos, tag me in your photos. They're my favorite rash guards that I've ever worn, and I'd love to share videos and pictures of you guys wearing them to the rest of the audience and the fan group. If you want to see the podcast continue to grow, please take 30 seconds and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. It's incredibly easy to do. You just click the little hamburger menu, rate the show 5 stars, click submit, and it helps a lot with positioning the show in front of other people who value human performance, strength and conditioning, and of course, jiu-jitsu. Dante Leon is the 2024 ADCC Open Class Bronze medalist. He is a Canadian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and competitor out of Pedigo Submission Fighting. He will be facing off in an epic jiu-jitsu battle against the exciting Andy Varela on October 10th for UFC Invitational Fight Pass number 8, where they'll square up at 170 pounds. Both of these guys are extremely aggressive. They have highly technical jiu-jitsu, and this is going to be an awesome card, so you definitely want to make sure you check it out. To support this show, please check out the sponsors in the show notes. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Dante Leon. We're back again, round 2, finally, with Dante Leon. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here, man. You're not only a busy man, but you're a high-performing, dominating grappler who's got a lot more opportunity in front of you after your recent performances. So I really appreciate you being here, bro.
Thank you, man. Good to be back.
So you had what online many people are arguing the sickest run at ADCC, demanding your pound for pound rankings. Can you just walk me through that day, like a little bit of a roller coaster of emotions, and then ultimately this incredible performance at the end, and some of the most exciting matches, in my opinion, of that day?
Yeah, so I had a rough day on Saturday at my weight. I ended up losing first round match. Made some errors in the match. Didn't feel like I really performed very well, so I was pretty bummed out. I was pretty upset. ADCC is once every 2 years, so there's always that feeling after you lose an ADCC tournament, ADCC Worlds. You kind of feel like that impending, like, shit, I have to wait 2 more years to get this back. You know what I mean? But thankfully, I was able to get into the open class, and then in the open, I had a pretty good run. I beat Mike Perez first fight. I submitted Micah, who was the champion of my division, and then lost to Kainan. And then in the bronze medal match, I was able to beat the 88 kilo champ as well. So 3 champs, 77, 99, 88 back-to-back matches. So it was definitely like one of the tougher runs I'd say that anybody's ever had to get through an open class in the ADCC, and it was definitely the toughest run that somebody of my size has taken in recent times.
Yeah, can you speak a little bit to the size differential? I think people will look and go, "Oh, Kanan's big," or Giancarlo's big, but someone being big and then the actual size differential is quite different. So when you're walking into the match against Duarte, or when you're in that final match against Giancarlo, how much are these guys outweighing you, and how much bigger are they than you?
Yeah, they're both quite a bit bigger than me. The one thing about me is, like, I have a pretty thick build, but I'm pretty short. I'm only like 5'8", so to go against guys like Kainan and Giancarlo that have, 5'11", 6 foot in height, and they have the kind of thickness and muscle density like they have, I figure that they are, 40 to 50 pounds heavier than me, depending on, the day. I would say closer to like 50 pounds for each of them.
But you're built like a brick shithouse. I mean, we both know that you strength train very seriously and you take your S&C for real. Do you feel in those moments like that's a huge plus for you? I mean, in some regard, your strength is really just leveling the playing field, because these guys are huge, right? Like Giancarlo is
Yeah,
super strong, and so is Kanan, but you put such an
yeah.
effort into that part of your training. I think a lot of other people forego it. Like you're a true a true gym head when it comes to strength and conditioning.
I think that's the reason that I can do what I do. Like I can consistently compete against larger opponents and win. And I think I'm really the only guy in the sport that does that. Every time you see somebody who's a little bit smaller that tries to go into the opens, they usually just get crushed. Um, but I'm kind of like the only guy who can do that because I think I have the physical strength to complement my jujitsu and my technique. So on a technical level, I can do a lot of things to bigger people that they aren't typically used to dealing with, but it's my strength that allows me to be able to last for multiple matches against bigger people. Because that's the biggest thing, like a little guy who's really talented can always beat a bigger guy for like one match or he might be able to string together like one or two, but it's really hard to win a bracket or a tournament that's two or three or four matches against bigger people because eventually it's just going to be too much. You know what I mean? They're not going to be able to
Right.
push that guy off. Eventually, they're not going to be able to hold that guy down. You know what I mean? It's so much more physically taxing against somebody who's heavier and stronger than you are. So I think that's the biggest difference with everybody else who tries to do the opens and does the pound for pound kind of thing, and me is the physical strength.
Like when you look at exercise selection and your program leading into this, can you explain to me a little bit? Part of this is that ADCCs every 2 years, as you alluded to, right? So the gap between peak performance is really large. And to some degree, that's a benefit because you can spend a lot of time really grinding it out in strength and conditioning without having to taper for some big event. Now, that's not necessarily totally true because you're also competing constantly and you have to manage your recovery and everything like that. But when you get with the guys at Westside, how do you build out a program for a grappler who competes on the scale that you do and still keep some of those principles of tried and true barbell strength and conditioning methods?
The biggest thing typically with when we're doing workout programs with Westside is we tend to keep things on 3 week waves. So it'll start out as like first week the lightest, second week the heavier, third week the heaviest, and then it kind of resets. There's either like a some sort of a deload week and then into a new phase or a new phase just starts. And a lot of times by the time we enter a deload week, it's by the time I'm competing again because I'm so active. So every like
Yep.
4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 8 weeks, when we're entering that kind of deload week, I'm able to kind of peak for every competition because of the programming going from those 3 week waves rather than like a 6 or an 8 week or 12 week or anything like that. It's more of a 3 week wave pattern. And that way it allows us to
Yeah.
kind of shut it down at any point in time and rest up and peak for an event or peak for a tournament. And to be honest, there's a lot of tournaments throughout the year that I literally don't change anything for. I literally train balls out the entire week and just go compete like Saturday or Sunday because I'm not really worried about like how amazing I'm going to compete at an IBJJF Open or ADCC Open. More my goal is to be world champ, ADCC
Right.
champ, who's number one champ. So, when I'm going to these smaller tournaments, I'm almost telling the guys at Westside, like, no, we can like work out hard as fuck today. It's not really a matter of peaking for this event necessarily. So, I think exercise selection and workout selection is important, but like selecting what tournaments to do it for and mapping out those 4 tournaments or 4 events in a year gives you a lot of leeway.
So there's it has to be acknowledged that like to you're an elite performer, you're a top athlete, and so to some degree there's elements of you that are by way of that an outlier, right? Like you're able to exercise and strength train at a high level and compete at a high level at the same time. A lot of people struggle with that, but if you were looking to kind of impart some advice on other people that are maybe even if they're not like a big time competitor, but they're trying to ramp up their strength and conditioning, but they still want to push it in jiu-jitsu and make those two things work together. How do you manage your recovery with your output?
Um, I think recovery is always something that's used of as it shouldn't be combined with things, you know, it shouldn't be something that's combined
Mm,
with your workout or your training or anything. It should be something completely separate. It should be prioritized, you know, and it comes down to proper sleep, proper nutrition, proper hydration. There's a lot of things that come into play with it that you can, you know, implement all throughout the day, all throughout the night. But, you know, if you're going to do the things for recovery, like stretching, rolling out, massages, anything like that, it's got to be its own thing. It's got to be treated as part of training. You know what I mean? So, you don't do jujitsu and lift at the same time. Lifting is kind of its own separate thing that helps you with jujitsu or helps you with whatever your sport is. I think the recovery needs to be the same way. So finding a routine and doing things that you see and you know help you. Um, it doesn't need to be like 4 times a week you're sitting in an ice bath. It could just be like you make a priority to get, you know, 6 to 8 hours of solid sleep in a night and you have 4 to 5 healthy, smaller meals in a day. I mean, that's going to help you recover a lot more than like living shitty and doing ice baths and saunas and, you know, doing red light therapy, things like that. Once your diet and your other things are kind of in line, especially as an athlete, it's really easy to implement the other things such as sauna, such as ice bath, cold plunge, things like that, and see the benefits of it. But you're only really seeing those benefits because you're living healthy and it's kind of giving you that extra few percent of recovery that you're kind of itching for a lot of times. And a lot of times, guys who aren't competitors, like we were talking about, they don't really put that priority into their life a lot of times. It's easier for them to slip up on their sleep than it is me. It's easier for them to have a few shitty meals in a row than it is me because a lot more rides on it for me. So I think it comes down to building the habits and those really simple things, and they can get a lot of benefit from it.
do you live with roommates or by yourself?
No, I live with roommates. I live with one roommate.
So do you like how important do you think that it is to have like an immediate social circle that supports that? Because those are big sacrifices. I mean, when you're working with a nutritionist, uh, which also I'd love to talk about because I think that's something I'm surprised more high level grapplers are not doing, or maybe they are and they don't talk about it. But you know, working with a nutritionist and making sacrifices to improve your sleep. I mean, these are things that like they don't coincide with a really active, crazy social life, right? So, how important is it to have the people that are close to you also kind of living that lifestyle, also strength training, putting value on that kind of stuff, so that it's just part of your environment?
That's something I've always strived to have is an environment around me not only forces me and the other people here to stay in line and to do things kind of
Mm,
like regimented in the right way, but it also creates a really good atmosphere and really good energy that makes things a lot easier. You know, it's a
yeah,
100 times easier for me to go to West Side and do all the workouts and things that I do now that the guys back here are doing them when we're in Toledo. Like I get to lead them through the workouts along my program, and a lot of the guys are coming out to Columbus and lifting with me at Westside. So it makes things a lot better. It creates the friendly competition in the room. It's always good when you see and feel your athletes and your training partners buying into the program,
right.
excuse me, and starting to really believe in it and do it. So yeah, it always helps, man. Like the more people that get on board and do it for real, the more it helps me, the more it motivates me, and it's less of a you have less of a chance to kind of like succumb to the typical pressures or the typical hang-ups about training when you have other people around you who can push you and who are going through the same things you're going through.
You said less of a chance to succumb to typical temptations.
Yeah, you just have all your people around you. Everybody's kind of pushing. There's never a time that, you know, one person is going to be allowed to like fall off the wagon completely. You know, somebody's going to be able to scoop him up and
Right.
give him a kick in the ass and get him back on course if he needs it.
So with your strength and conditioning regimen, how long before ADCC did you start to taper things down, or start to lay off the volume and the intensity to allow your body to get ready for what ultimately became some of the most aggressive and longest and difficult matches in that absolute?
Yeah. So there was ADCC is one of the events that gets planned out every single year at the beginning is like one of the 4 or 5 that I'm going to be doing. So it's always a full peak for it. There's always 10 days of basically turning the volume almost all the way off as far as the accessory work and as far as max efforts and things like that. That's not done for almost 2 weeks before the event. But during those
Yep.
same time slots that I typically have workouts, that I typically have lifting sessions, I'm still doing some kind of workout. So rather than like a max effort leg day, I could do like a leg day where I'm doing like step ups and hip mobility and, core, some static abs, some reverse hyper, all kinds of different things like that that aren't going to make you too sore, but will prime your body a little bit. And I can do those things leading all the way up to the events.
And so you're staying active, you're keeping blood moving, you're feeling good, but you're also training at a high frequency. So like what is does the training structure change also? Do you go from, do you taper down your stand up, for example, or how does that change in kind of parallel track to your strength and conditioning? Maybe we'll stick to that last, like, yeah, that 4 week to 3 week window out of
Hmm.
a major competition, one of those big four for you.
Yeah, so like jujitsu is the one where there's always going to be like a rebound in strength. Like if you hit a PR in a lift and then you stop lifting for a week, like I always feel like you'll be stronger that next week than like you've ever been. Because
Yeah.
if you're getting like PRs on certain lifts, especially if you're an advanced lifter or you're just like generally strong, you're probably like really close to being fried as far as your recovery and as far as your soreness, things like that.
Yeah.
So if you were to like hit, your max numbers or like close to or the best, you've ever really lifted and you see your time and you see your volume, everything's really peaking. If you were to take like a week to 10 days off of lifting completely and then use your strength, you're probably going to be stronger than really you've ever been, or at least you were before this training cycle. So that's always a big thing. But jujitsu, I feel like you lose that timing really quickly, as compared to like your
Yeah.
strength and conditioning or your plyometrics or things like that. I don't feel like you need to continuously test your vertical jump right up to the competition or test your like sled drag ability right up to the competition. I say you could probably do those things like 2, 3 weeks out from the tournament and then legitimately know, hey, I'm going to be really explosive for this event. Whereas jujitsu, if you stop training, for me at least, even a week before a tournament, I feel like shit. It takes me a long time to knock that rust off of that timing feeling. You know what I mean? A competition is so much different than training. You might not train for like a month straight and come back and feel like you had the best session of your life. It's not really like that with competition. It's not something that you can just like not do and have your timing be off and have success with.
Yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. The difference between, at your level, your training camps are high level. You're not working with people that are brand new. It's like you're prepping, and I would assume prepping with other people that also have their eye on the prize, and you guys are getting ready for serious competition. How close do you think you get to replicating the intensity that you find under the spotlight at ADCC in the absolute division, like on finals night? Do you even come close to what that's like, or is it still surprising when you get out there and it's like you and Bodoni, and all of a sudden they blow the whistle and there you go, and it's like totally different?
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing that can give you that moment. You know what I mean? There's really no way to like duplicate it or replicate it, especially before an event. Like we've never competed in T-Mobile before. We competed at Thomas and
Yeah.
Mack Center, and we were around pretty much the same crowd, like same size and everything. So there was no surprise, but there's never really a way that you can replicate or duplicate that. You know, it has to come down to you being able to handle those situations, and then you being able to have like skills and reactions that you trust and that you are going to trust to be able to work in front of 20,000 people or 15,000 people, you know? So, it really comes down to, for me, is like when I'm training, I'm not really trying to duplicate or replicate a tournament. I'm really trying to train to develop myself, so that I can apply my skills and I can apply my strengths and win these tournaments and win these matches, regardless of where the venue is or regardless of what things, what challenges a venue has to offer. Like that's the biggest thing. To expand on it, it's about developing yourself and your skills, your mental game, all the things that have to do with and have to deal with winning a competition or winning matches. You have to develop all of that, and how and what environment you develop it in is extremely personal and is extremely different for each individual athlete. But to try and replicate the intensity of a tournament, especially the intensity of a tournament that's in front of 15,000 audience members, is impossible to do. There's no gym that you can create that spectacle at. The only thing that's really going to translate directly to the next match would be your experience in something like that. And you brought up John Carlo and I have a lot of experience there. We competed in ADCC at the Thomas and Mack Center. We were in front of a ton of people. We competed at T-Mobile Arena. I competed in 2019 as well at ADCC. So we have a lot of experience in ADCC and a lot of experience with all the different um, things that happen in the crowd and things that happen around a event that is that busy and that packed. So we have a little bit of a leg up on the competition. But then if we go against somebody like Cyborg or Wagner, they literally have 15 more years of experience than we
Years.
have. And
Yeah.
it's pretty insane. Cyborg literally has matches at black belt in 2005. In 2005, I wasn't even training jujitsu, and like I'm an old guy in jujitsu. Like he was a black belt before I ever
Yeah.
trained. So that's kind of crazy.
What does it mean to you when you see guys like Wagner and Cyborg on the mats with you, throwing it, putting it all out there and doing that in their 40s?
Have to respect what they do, you know what I mean? I've told them both really to their face, like, you know, how just a congratulations, just like a hats off really is like the biggest
Yeah.
compliment I can give is a hats off on what they're doing. I mean, it's a motivation. I've said many times that I want to compete until I'm 40 years old. So I think it's incredible to see the examples like what we saw at ADCC. Lovato's no spring chicken either. He's 40 or 41 years old. Wagner's way up there. Cyborg's older than all of them. I don't think they're
Yeah.
showing signs of slowing down. They look like they're doing really well. Uh, Wagner probably had his best ADCC performance maybe ever. Took
Yeah.
second and did well in the Open. Cyborg had one of his better ADCC performances since ever. The last time he had a performance that was that good, he won the Open in like 2013. So 11 years later to have basically like almost as good as a result is absurd. So yeah, I think they all had, and Lovato too. I mean, Lovato
As
placed
a,
second
uh,
in the tournament, and that's the best that he's ever placed. He placed second previously at 88 kilos in 2013 as well. So it's crazy to see like a decade after that, these guys are still winning and getting the greatest results of their career.
it's cool too. You see both those guys have a extensive mixed martial arts background, and Lovato being a Bellator champion, right? No scrub at all. And here are two guys that are finding longevity in their 40s and going and competing. Even seeing like Wagner's Luke Griffith match, I mean, that's incredible, right? Like that guy's a young, super spry, athletic, explosive person against a quote old man. When you look at that, here's two guys that made a smart decision. They had fun in mixed martial arts, and they walked away, both for the right reasons, I think. When you look at someone like yourself, tons of opportunity ahead of you. You're only getting better year over year over year. You have a stocky, explosive, and strong frame. Do you ever think, now you're going into a UFC invitational event, you're already familiar with the organization and the people there. You're starting to rub shoulders and elbows. Do you ever feel that pull? Do you ever feel curiosity with mixed martial arts and the octagon?
No, at this point now, I think I've missed the boat. You know what I mean? I'm 29 years old. Uh, I think I'm still, in my opinion, I'm still young, and I really am still young as far as an athlete goes in 2020s. You know, in the 2020s and in this generation, 40 years old is not uncommon to be a world class athlete in any given sport. 40-year-old soccer players that are world class, 40-year-old F1 drivers, baseball players, soccer players, football players, even, you know, that are 40 years old, you know. So it's not uncommon to think that I have another decade left, but, you know, I want to use that decade
For sure.
intelligently, and I don't want to go into MMA and start changing the gears that much. I've always had such a passion and such a love for combat sports, you know, ever since I was a kid, even
Yeah.
before I even knew what jujitsu was. I loved boxing. I loved professional wrestling as a kid. I loved, you know, anything, any kind of combat I loved. And I'm like a big, almost a historian. I'm a big buff on the stats. I'm a big buff on, you know, who are all the greats of MMA and kickboxing and boxing. So yeah, I've always been a huge fan. I've always had an interest in it. And that interest sometimes intrigued me to like want to do it. And I've done a lot of training, and I've done a lot of, you know, being around MMA guys and training with them, whether it was to help them with their grappling or whether I'm like getting in there and doing striking classes or MMA practices, you know. But um, at this point now, you know, man, in my opinion, I missed the ball. I dropped the ball on it. And I'm not upset by it at all. You know, I'm really happy I invested my time in jiu-jitsu. And at this point, with the opportunities that I'm having and the continued success I'm continuing to have, I don't see it being the smartest move to go to MMA. So, you know, even though
Yeah.
I
I mean,
feel like kind of
a lot of risk comes along
yeah,
with that.
yeah, exactly. I mean, if I was 20 years old, or you know, if I was like Micah's age and I have all these, you know, wins already, and I'm looking at things and saying, you know, I want to take a couple years and do MMA, I can completely understand where he's coming from. And I've been there before as far as being a young athlete coming up who's, you know, thrown that idea around. But, you know, I'm not that guy anymore. I'm kind of set in my ways now with what I do.
When you look at this past year of grappling, I mean, from a as a fan perspective and someone who loves training and loves watching it, love mixed martial arts, we pretty much had the best year for grappling that there's been. I
Ever,
mean, between
ever.
all the controversy with CJI, you know, call all of that what you will, it was the most eyes looking at the sport statistically in terms of streaming, the two events, the buzz, people talking about it, the performances in both, right? It wasn't like CJI popped off and everything at ADC sucked. It quite the contrary. ADCC was phenomenal. You had incredible matches, yourself included in that. CJI was phenomenal, incredible matches, new structure. It was all very fun. So the fans won 1,000% over that weekend.
Yeah.
I've talked to athletes on both sides of this. I've spoken to people who made the decision to go over to CJI, those that have decided to stay with ADCC. Can you walk me through a little bit of that? You know, finding out about CJI, knowing that the competitor field was going to split. I don't know if opportunities came your way that you turned down or that you entertained, but what was it like for you being as dedicated as you are, so focused, wanting an ADCC championship, knowing what that would mean to you, to go through kind of those months building up to that and then the ultimate weekend?
Yeah. So seeing all the things come out about CJI outside of like seeing my name on a list and seeing my name basically be mentioned a lot by the people running the event and things like that, I was never like approached about it or sent like an invite. The event was something that was like, I feel like athletes reached out to get into the event, and then they would be, you know, inviting certain people who they wanted. So I never got a straight up invite, and I never really messaged to get one or messaged to get in on the tournament. My focus was to win ADCC. Given that it wasn't a long time before the event, I kind of just stuck to my guns and did ADCC. And I don't regret it overall. I don't regret my decision. I don't regret what I did. And at the same time, I do not hold any kind of ill will or ill feelings towards somebody who went to CJI. I would fully support their decision. I fully support everybody's decision who went to CJI. If I don't know all the details behind the scenes, if some people were shady about things or some people were kind of like being weird. I don't know about any of that, but if somebody decides to go to CJI because of the money and because of the tournament and because of whatever reason, support them 100%, man. And I'm really happy and I'm really, really, impressed with what happened that weekend. Not only was ADCC huge, but CJI was huge. And not only was CJI a huge success and had all these exciting matches, ADCC had it too. And it was the same weekend. We had a lot of the same fans at both venues, and we had a lot of people at both places, viewing both tournaments, supporting both tournaments. And it was cool to see that really the jiu-jitsu community overall supported and loved both events. There was not really a lot of like hatred. There wasn't a lot of shit talk or, down with CJI, up with ADCC or vice versa. There's never any of that.
Right.
And, I felt full support from the guys at CJI, and I think they felt full support from the guys at ADCC as far as the fans go.
If you look over to that bracket, that under 80 kilo division, who do you think would have presented the biggest challenge for you if you were to have gone over to the CJI pool?
Cade or Ty would probably be like the matches. I've never had a match with Cade, but I've had a couple with Ty. They're always tough. Ty is always kind of like the brother who's a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and I feel like as they were growing up, Ty was always the one who was a little more physical, a little more mature. Um, but it seems like Cade's definitely caught up. Like it seems like Cade's about the same size as Ty. He might still be a little smaller, but they're both super physical. They're both super tough. So they're always going to be like a tough match and a big challenge. But there are a lot of guys in that bracket that were really tough, man. ADCC, you have a lot of tough guys there, but CJI had a lot of really tough guys. Hulk is
Yeah,
somebody that's super
especially in that
tough. I mean,
absolute.
yeah, like how do you have to? It's hard to prepare to go against somebody like Lucas Hulk at 175 pounds. I mean, that's not really a match you would typically have as a guy who's like a 77 kilo grappler. Like Ian O'Flanagan's another guy you typically wouldn't fight somebody that big. And so, those guys are always
Yeah.
going to pose some problems to any of the bigger guys or any of the smaller guys. Sorry, the bigger guys are. Andrew Tackett would be a great match, a fun match, and he would always be difficult. He's really hard to submit and put away, and he's got a lot of gas. He's got a lot of he's got a big gas tank, so he's really hard to wear down. He's really hard to wear out, and he really figured out how to fight well in that venue, man. He was fighting off the wall
Yeah.
really well. He was getting offensively. Him and his brother both were getting offensively on a lot of takedowns leading into the wall
Yep.
and coming off the wall. They were able to get on top of their opponents pretty easily. So it seems like they kind of, I don't want to say mastered, but they really got down how to use that CJI wall, that karate combat wall, and they were the ones who had the most success with it, honestly. So yeah, given their skill set already and how good they are, and then their kind of hack with that wall, because when Andrew would get that forward motion on takedowns, he was almost 100% landing on top because he knew he just had to get you to the wall and then he could get you down.
And
And with
yeah,
that kind of
totally.
strategy and that kind of experience factor would be really hard to deal with him in that pit.
Yeah, I liked the pit. I thought it was a cool. I'd seen it in Karate Combat before, but I kind of liked how it worked in grappling. What were your thoughts on? They changed the scoring system, right? So they did like basically UFC rounds with a 10-9, 10-8 scoring system, which as someone who understands jiu-jitsu and trains it all the time, I don't need that to understand what's going on. But I thought it was kind of an intelligent play from their promotion to like, let's fold in people from the MMA community, from the wrestling community that maybe like they don't really get the scoring system, the 2 points of the passing or this or that. It's very black and white. The round's over immediately. You know who won. It's kind of a live scoring thing going on. As a competitor, what are your thoughts on that? Being so familiar with the ADCC system and obviously excelling very well in that, do you like the idea of what CJI had going on with scoring? And
It's good. I don't think there's anything necessarily like wrong with it, but It's just going to open up a lot of ways for controversy, especially
Yeah.
when we don't have stats. And that's my only thing about it is when we look at boxing scores, a lot of times you hear people, or MMA is another one too, and people are like, "Oh, that was bullshit." And then you look at the fight, and it's like,
Right.
okay, well the numbers aren't really lying here. Like maybe it was bullshit, but the numbers will tell that it's bullshit. If not, there's a lot of people who say they should have won fights, but they got taken down 7 times, and they got outstruck
Right.
for 3 of the 5 rounds. All these things, and those numbers don't lie. And jiu-jitsu becomes a really tough thing to say, like, okay, so what are we going to count? Are we just going to count like points, or like positions that you scored, or submissions, or like what are the categories that we can really um show? Because there's no way to say that somebody has top control time in jiu-jitsu if I pulled guard. You're not controlling on top. Like, even
Totally.
if you took me down and I'm playing guard and I'm like active and I'm attacking you, you're not like, that's not control time for you. Whereas in MMA, if I take you down, I'm getting control time right now. So at the end of the fight, if I've
Yeah.
taken you down for like 3 minutes of each round, I have 15 minutes of control time at the end of the fight. That shows like clearly I should win this fight. I've controlled you for the majority of the of
Right.
the fight. You know what I mean? And even if you were like on your back and active in MMA, that clearly shows like you lost the fight.
Right.
Whereas in jiu-jitsu, it's really tough to, and that's why you saw a lot of times with Levi. In my opinion, Levi was doing
Yeah.
great. In the
Same.
last match, I can understand a little bit of the frustration coming from Cade, and I can understand the frustration coming from Ty as well, because there's only 5 minutes. Like, it's so hard to pass somebody's guard in 5 fucking minutes, especially
Yeah.
if the person is good. Like, there could be like a flexible purple belt kid who would be so hard to pass in 5 minutes if you really didn't want to get past. You know what I mean? So I can understand the
Totally.
frustration that some of these guys are having with that. But at the same time, he's proving that the 10-9 system is not necessarily the same as MMA. And he's showing kind of like what that um, where the kind of drama, or that kind of, I'm missing on how to say it, but how there can be a little bit of controversy with things like that,
Yeah.
because he can clearly win matches doing basically everything the opposite of what everybody in wrestling would think, the opposite of what everybody in MMA would think. It would take like a keen jujitsu eye to look and say, no, yeah, he did win those matches, or no, yeah, he did win rounds 2 and 3. Whereas a lot of
Right.
people coming into these events, or coming into that event, are probably thinking, this is bullshit and blah blah blah. And, everybody who sees a 10-9 system or a 10-point must system, there's always going to be so much controversy. But at the same
Well, there's
time,
definitely.
I did like how it was a different, because there was only 5 minutes. I really liked
Mhm.
how it was not points. You know what I mean? Like, if I sound
Yeah.
like I've
Totally.
just been talking a lot of shit, but I do like that, because if it's only 5 minutes and you're gonna score like a 2 point takedown and then not get taken down and just stay away and do whatever the whole round, that's bullshit. Because
Right.
then we just completely change the landscape of this tournament. That could be super exciting. It's gonna get super boring for $1 million. So I don't think it would be the right move to implement a like a strict point system with 5 minute rounds because of that. It's so hard for
Right.
me, and for somebody like me and Andrew, me and Cade, it's going to be so hard to have substantial scores in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? It's going to take
Totally.
some time, and it's going to take some repetition, some kind of like second, third, fourth, fifth round kind of thing before we start to see somebody's technique or strategy breaking down and the other person having success. The first two are like one, two,
Yeah.
3 rounds. It's going to be really tough to see like two guys at the highest level, one dude just like fucking cut through and have 10-8 rounds. You know what I mean? They're going to be like really, really close rounds. Like 5 minutes is really not a
Yeah.
lot of time, man, especially with everybody in jiu-jitsu nowadays is preparing for 20-minute matches and 15-minute rounds. Even IBJJF Worlds and ADCC is 10 minutes. And then ADCC
Yeah.
has a 5 minute overtime or 20-minute final, 10-minute overtime. So, our instinct is these longer matches to wear people down, and then you change gears into that 5 minute round, and it poses a lot of problems to a lot of people, I think.
So do you change the way that you guys train, as I understand it, at Pedigo with Heath? Are you working 15-minute rounds, 20-minute rounds, or like at your level? It's like you are your way of playing jujitsu. You tack it, the Ruotolos. It's a lot of gas tank, a lot of pressure, a lot of constant moving. You're not ever accepting positions. You're not pulling guard very often. It's a lot of go, 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 go. So part of that's inherent in the athlete, right? It's a mentality thing. It's who you are. You've probably always been that way from when you played hockey to when you started doing jujitsu. It's just if someone says go and you're going to go for as long as you can. But how do you start to train that strategically in conjunction with your strength and conditioning to prep for something like, the absolute division? That's an endurance race, man. All you guys are good. All you guys are strong. All those guys are big. Everyone's technical. So how do you actually fine tune that part of your spear in training?
I think the biggest thing is like when you get close to certain tournaments is that you adjust those type of things. Like the rule set needs to be taken into consideration when you're doing rounds and when you're doing your training. The length of rounds or the length of match needs to be taken into consideration and adjusted. Even though training like 20, 15-minute rounds will have some benefit to you that can carry over to all rule sets and that can carry over to all match lengths, it's important to really think about, if this match is 6 minutes, I can't bring my 20-minute strategy in here because it just doesn't work, you know,
Right.
and I can't bring my 6-minute strategy into the 20-minute match because if I don't submit this guy in 5 minutes, I'm going to gas myself out and then I'm going to get my ass beat because 15 minutes when you're tired is a really, really long time. So
Right.
it's always important to adjust those things depending on what's going to have what those factors are in that change between each event. So, for example, when I'm preparing for the UFC Fight Pass event, I have a 10-minute match, which
Right.
is pretty typical. IBJJF Worlds, ADCC, a lot of super fight events is 10-minute match. There's also a option for a 5-minute overtime that'll have points, but with the 10-minute match, it's submission only. So this changes a lot of things, even though it's the same time frame as a lot of the other tournaments that I've done. It changes a lot because it's submission only. I don't have to sit here and worry about a takedown. I don't have to sit and worry about exposing myself to something and potentially getting, scored on in these other tournaments that would be points or
Right.
would be advantages for other tournaments. I don't necessarily have to worry about it now because it's submission only. So my strategy is going to change quite a bit, even though it's the same amount of time and it's the amount of time that I'm the most used to competing with. I'm going to need to bring a little bit of a submission only mindset into that. A lot of ways to train that is like no time limit rounds. And those rounds can go 30, 40, 50 minutes, however long.
Gotcha.
That's how you develop kind of your submission only strategy and sense. But now you have to implement the match length in with that. So now we have to condense that kind of strategy of wearing somebody down and finishing them, putting them away. And we have to condense it down into 10 minutes. So now we need the conditioning and now we need the intensity to be high. When we have a 1 hour match, it's not really dependent on conditioning because there's no human being in the world who can do something like
Right.
jujitsu or wrestling really, really hard for an hour straight. They would be probably dead. But we can use a lot of technique and be
Yeah.
really sound technically and be able to do something for an hour and eventually submit that person. It won't be easy. It will be taxing physically, but we can do that a lot easier than we can trying to sprint and put our head through the wall for an hour. So yeah, that's where the conditioning comes into play is these shorter matches. I really feel like the shorter the match is, the harder, more intense, and the more chaos is going to happen.
When you take let's take a 10-minute round for example, and someone like, let's say like Mika. So if you have a strategy of wearing someone down and you're starting on your feet, there's an energy exchange, right? Like if you're actively shooting, if you're trying to get under someone and shoot a double or a single, that's a high energy output effort for you on the moment in which you go for the thing, right? It's like a power clean. So if you're
Hmm.
looking at all these potential moments where you have to explode, to shoot, to change levels, grab an ankle or a leg or something like that, how do you take into account that energy output and how to actively wear down your opponent? Like, what are some things you're actually doing with your weight, with your length, your size against your opponent to start to get them tired to where their game plan changes due to fatigue?
So, and for me, I need time in order to do this. And that amount of time that it takes me to kind of break down an opponent depends a lot on their skill, but it depends on the specific opponent as well. There's a lot of really
Mm-hmm.
good people who I feel like I can break down pretty easily or within a short amount of time. And there's some people who I've competed against who like refuse to get fucking tired or at least show me that they were tired. So it was like an
Right.
uphill battle to get to good positions for the full 10 or 15 minutes, you know? So kind of depends on the individual, I would say. But if we're standing, for example, and we're wasting a lot of energy to get to the top, I know if I get on top of somebody, I have really good pressure and I can wear them down and make them carry my weight. And that's a really easy way
Mm-hmm.
to fatigue your opponent and also save your energy because now you're not moving as much. You're not doing as much movement. The biggest kind of energy drain for you is going to be getting to the top. You're going to need to take your opponent down or you're going to need to sweep your opponent. If you only have the option
Right.
of taking your opponent down because your guard sucks, now you've kind of put yourself in the hot seat because now you need to take this person down and that and you've gone against people who are scrambling and people who are physical in the gym. It's so hard to take somebody down and hold somebody down even in the ADCC rule set. They pop back up to their feet, they go to turtle, they roll around, they scramble, they get back to blah, blah, blah. You do it again and before you know it you're gassed and you don't really have a way to get to the top. You have to either rely on them being more tired than you and pulling guard,
Yeah.
which generally doesn't happen, or you pull guard and you sweep them. So if you have the option to play from the guard or play from standing or to attack takedowns or to pull guard and attack submissions, sweeps, things like that, you have a lot more avenues. You have a lot more ways to get to your desired positions. And you have a lot of ways where you can pull guard, attempt to use your guard. It's not working. Back to our feet, trying for takedowns, back to our guard. You can play between different positions in different scenarios. You can use different guards. You can use different takedowns. You can use upper body as opposed to shooting into legs. You can use a half guard or deep half guard wrestle up kind of situation rather than using a butterfly or trying to enter in on legs. There's a lot of different things you can do, but if you don't have the skills in all of those areas, you kind of get stuck between a rock and a hard place having to take somebody down who's super fucking physical, super athletic. And, a lot of times
Right.
that's what's kind of like the cause of the end of these matches is guys using too much energy or using energy in a silly way.
Well, wait, I mean, that's kind of a perfect segue here to talk about. You have a UFC Invitational event coming up against Andy Varela on the 10th of October, I believe.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what the people want, right? It's Andy Varela is no slouch. He's very explosive, super athletic, acrobatic. He's a risk taker, right? He's had some epic matches in the ADCC trials build up. You, for obvious reasons that we talked about in this whole episode and the other one, and then your performances at ADCC, also no slouch. So this is a great match for the people. You're getting two explosive athletes together that are crafty on their stand up. They have good pressure. You guys are both strong. So, what is the format for this bout? And maybe you can talk to whatever degree you want to share your strategy. How do you go in? How do you capitalize on this opportunity under these lights now and beat someone like Andy Varela?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with Andy, he poses a lot of challenges. Like what you said, he poses a lot of challenges physically. He poses a lot of challenges as a jiu-jitsu guy too, because he's really good on his feet and he's hard for a lot of jiu-jitsu guys to handle. I mean, he is a jiu-jitsu guy. I'm talking about him like he's like just a wrestler or something like that. He is a jiu-jitsu guy. He is a submission grappler, but he's hard for a lot of these guys in the division to handle. He's big, he's physical. He's fast. He's athletic. He's kind of all the things that like non-athletic jujitsu guys fucking hate to deal with. So he poses a lot of issues that way, and he poses a lot of issues with his physical attributes. I think the easiest way for me to have success against Andy is exactly what I talked about, is being able to attack and being able to be comfortable against him from all different areas. If I get stuck in a situation or a scenario where like I have to take him down to win, or I have to play from my guard to win, I'm going to be behind. So the biggest thing is being able to be comfortable on the feet, being able to be comfortable on top, on the bottom, in positions of offense, in positions of defense. That way I can take the most risks possible and I can bring a lot to him. I can throw a lot at him rather than just takedowns. I can throw a lot at him and throw a lot his way and eventually look for something to stick or look for something that I'm having success with. It's a 10-minute match, like we said, it's submission only. So my biggest worry is not going to be scoring a point. My biggest worry is going to be forcing into positions and forcing into scenarios where I can expose him and either get him pinned down on the ground in good position where I can work from there, or put him in positions to force him making mistakes and then submit him. It's a submission only match. I don't want to go all the way. I don't want to go the whole distance. I don't want to waste time this way. I want to win this fight by submission. So the easiest way for me to do that is to be able to be in situations where I can throw as much at him as possible.
I think, following both you and Andy on online and just kind of the buildups to different events, it seems like, and I could be out of the water here, but it seems like he actually has a little bit of respect for you, which doesn't it doesn't come across in the majority of the things that he puts out for his opponents. But I think, after your performance at ADCC, there's no grappler on earth who could look you in the eyes and not respect you for that, right? So here's a guy who
Yeah.
typically has a really brash personality, talks a lot of trash, likes to get in people's heads. It carries that onto the mats. It's exciting for the fans, but it's also, I think it presents a little bit of a challenge for people to stay focused and stay on their track and do their jujitsu when he's very comfortable kind of getting in their head about it and talking trash. So knowing that he clearly there's like that respect, I think he appreciates the opportunity and is psyched that you guys are going to be able to put this match on. Is there ever any part of you that hates dealing with personas, personalities? Does that stuff ever get to you, or what do you do to just stay focused on Dante Leon's jiu-jitsu?
Oh, I kind of just try and act the way that I am all the time, just all the time, you know what I mean? And then when I do interviews and I do things like this, I try my very best to talk normal. If anything, I try and swear a little bit less because, I have a little bit of a potty mouth. So, outside of that, I pretty much just act the exact same way that I do all the time. I try not to hide everything. When I say that I'm an open book, I like to talk to people. I like to communicate with people, but I'm also not like going out of my way to be like overly nice or anything kind of fake
Yeah.
this way. I try and be in all of my interviews, all my interactions I have with people. I just try and be Dante Leon, and
Yeah.
for me, it gets frustrating when I deal with other people or I see other people who I'm like, bro, why don't you just be like who you are? And even with people around, and there's people in my life who, a lot of times I wish people would just be like who they are. Just if they're silly, if they're goofy, if they're nerdy, like that's what I want you to be. You know what I mean? That's why people love you for who you are, and if you have to fabricate this image, or give people this certain image of yourself that you think they want to see, I think it's all bullshit. I think people just want to see the real you. And Andy, Andy is a guy that's really him, man. Those tattoos are real. The haircut's real.
Yeah.
He's a professional grappler. He's a good fucking grappler. His style, his swag, or whatever he calls it, it's all real. It's all really him. And he is a grappler who's earned places. He's won the PGF Worlds. He's not like a Naga Grappler's Quest guy who acts hard online and gets matches with guys he's outmatched against. I mean, he's a top 10 grappler in the world. He's super good,
Right.
super tough. So, he has a little bit of a different style from most people in jiu-jitsu. He has a little bit of a different um aura to him. But, I think that that's really Andy. That's really how he is. And I don't take it as any form of disrespect or any form of like over brashness, over confidence. I think just kind of how he is.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be, this is a match that the fans love to see. It's one thing that I really tip my hat to the promoters in the grappling world is they make these fights happen. They really, as small as grappling is, and as much as it's grown, they do a good job of bringing the top talent together and letting us watch. And it's something that
Yeah,
I think, in some other promotions in combat sports, it's harder to do. There's a lot of times that you wish that you got to see two fighters get the octagon together or two fighters step in the ring together, but there's a lot of red tape and a lot of bureaucracy, and so things don't happen. But if you look at the last 365 days for grappling, it's incredible. You're getting the all-time matches that we want to see over
yeah,
and over again.
for sure.
How does it feel going over to the UFC promotion? And you had such a big last year with Iga and being on Team Adolfo, and then your ADCC run and everything. It actually looks like your trajectory is going like this, despite being 29, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm really happy to be on the Fight Pass event, man. It's been something that I've tried to get on for a long time. It's been a goal to get on every major super fight promotion, win a title on every single major super fight promotion. And I was able to do that honestly, basically on everything to do with flow grappling. So I was able to
Mm-hmm.
compete in all of them, like a main event, win titles, but I've never really been able to even get on a UFC Fight Pass broadcasted event. Like I've never been able to get on Polaris. I've never been able to get on um what's the one like the quintet tournaments, any
Yep.
of that. So to get onto the Fight Pass Invitational, being like the first one on Fight Pass, I'm really, really excited about that. That to me is like the biggest, best event to get into as far as exposure, as far as production quality, as far as the quality of competitors. You see that they spare no cost when it comes to getting the best competitors in the world from both uh, MMA grapplers and submission full-time professional jiu-jitsu grapplers. So it's really cool to be able to get on that event. It's really cool to see how they've marketed and how they are piecing this event together. I think when you look at how the event schedule is, like how the matches are, and you see how things are kind of being mapped out, you see that they're very skilled and they know their shit as far as matchmaking, as far as promotion, as far as how to piece together a card. It's one of the first times in jiu-jitsu I've seen like legit good promotion going on at the highest level.
Yeah, I think they've made a clear choice, years ago that they were going to put money and effort and time and resources into this and help grow grappling. I think it's very easily recognized as a huge farm uh, team, basically for the UFC. It's you got a lot of guys that are hopefuls that come over or retire and then go into grappling, and you're still excited to watch them on Fight Pass. So to be there to have your name on that list and to see these matchups, I think it's awesome. There's two things I'd love to touch on before we go here. One is, can you explain the kit for ADCC, your Parry kit, the design for it? How do you guys come up with that?
Not sure. George at Parry always gets some designs together and he sends them over to me. It actually just sends me like pictures or ideas and we kind of just like bounce ideas off of it. The first two rash guards were just like white and black, kind of just plain rash guards with just the logos on the back, but with the kind of almost like a
Yeah.
spray paint logo on it on the front and through the design, it made it look really cool and it was like a nice touch to it. But to have all the sponsors on the kit and have the kit matching top and bottom for the ADCC is always an important thing for me.
Yeah, I think George is the man. Perry does great work. I'm
Yeah.
obviously a big fan of theirs and everything that they put together. Uh, Pedigo had an awesome showing.
Hmm.
Between you and Pixley, I mean, I feel like it's kind of hard to argue. Not, there are great moments. There's many great moments in an event like that and over the weekend. But two that stuck out to me, regardless of the fact that I'd had you on here before, is Pixley defeating Marigali and the fashion in which he did it. It's
Hmm.
fucking crazy.
Yeah.
To demonstrate that skill against someone who is as skilled as Marigali is, and politics and whatever aside, just like how great of a grappler that guy is. To do it in that fashion was marvelous. And then your performance, going through the absolute division in that run was just incredible. And to submit Mika Galvao, especially right now at this point in time when I think if you polled 100 people, 100 people would say that that wasn't going to happen, right? So we're talking about moments of greatness happening at ADCC. Pedigo and Heath's team and you guys, it has always kind of struck me as like this blue collar approach of like really hardworking people that happen to be talented at grappling, just putting it on display. Like the work ethic somehow just shows through in your guys' charisma, your personalities, the way you carry yourself. What is it about that team? What is it about the people that you train with there that is continuing to just produce top level people capable of these moments of pure upset, despite, from the viewer's perspective, it being very clear that you believed the whole time that it could happen, and that Pixley believed the whole time that it could happen, and that Heath believed the whole time that both of you guys could pull those kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the way the public doesn't believe is always the craziest thing, you know. I mean, everybody forgets that I had two matches with Micah that were extremely controversial not that long ago. Um, I'm really the only guy to push Micah like that. The only other person to even beat Micah in my division was Cade, and that was by submission in like a 14 or 12 or 14 minutes into a match. So, you know, to push Micah and score on him and, you know, take him down and put him in bad positions. We have 30 minutes of mat time together. Extremely, extremely close matches with a lot of controversy. So it's crazy that people would think I have no chance or, you know, just kind of forget about me or not talk about me. So that was always like the craziest part to me is like whenever anybody talked about him or anybody was saying things about him that everybody just kind of forgot about me. They talked about Cade, they talked about Ty, they talked about all of these other things, but you know, there's a dude here who's like arguably beat him twice, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of
Yeah.
was always the thing. And I never walked around saying I beat Micah or saying that I should have won this or I should have won that. And I still don't. But I know there's a lot of controversy in those matches. And I know we're very, very close on skill. And I was just kind of able to prove what we all already knew. I knew I could beat Micah. I knew I could beat Micah a number of ways. Did I expect to beat Micah in less than 2 minutes with a straight footlock? Not necessarily. Was it in the game plan? Kinda, you know what I mean? But like it's hard to call those things necessarily. But I do know, and I did know, and I know now more than ever that yeah, I can beat these guys, and I have beaten these guys before. On top of which, it's always crazy to me too, is like we've been on the top as a team for a good amount of time now. You know, as far as best teams on the planet that produce the best results, Pedigo's been up there for a number of years, you know, and it always seems like in jiu-jitsu because it's a newer sport as far as popularity goes, you know, it's been around a long time, but it was never really around a long time as a sport. Now it's newer as a sport. Everybody gets these hard-ons about like these new trends or these new teams or these new people, and they forget about all these other people, you know. And we've talked about already like Lovato and Cyborg being around since before I've ever even done jujitsu. Black belts before I ever did jujitsu. Wagner being a black belt before I ever trained jujitsu. So it's sad that like I'm a forgotten about generation or I'm a forgotten about athlete to a lot of the new public coming into the sport when I'm current. I'm like the most current guy. I'm just not the newest guy. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
sad to see that even the guys that are older than me or even the guys who have been around for longer than I have are even more forgotten about and even more looked over than the new people. And I think it's a little bit crazy, you know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
it's it's crazy, honestly, to be honest. And when it comes from fans or when it comes from, you know, the general public, it doesn't say the same. But when it comes from people who are high up in the sport, from fight announcers, from fight promoters, from different people like this, it's kind of shocking because it's like,
Mm.
this isn't how we should be acting. Like, this isn't the idea we should have. You know, we've been around a long time. Pedigo's been around a long time. We have a lot of respect. We've commanded a lot of respect because of our results and because of our results in and outside of competition. We have success as a team. We're growing in associations. We're growing in black belts were growing in members of our gyms. My gym is growing in memberships just like Heath's gyms is, and we're 6 hours apart, you know. So we're having success on and off the competition mats, and it's kind of sad. Like sometimes it gets swept under the rug a little bit, and I don't think we're like persecuted by any means. I don't think that anybody's like out to get us. I think this is just what happens. And another example of this is I think is like Autos. Like a lot of people want to forget about Autos because of a lot of things that happen between New Wave and Autos and a lot of things that happen on the competition mats with some of their competitors and things like that. And then ADCC happens and everybody's like, geez, Andre's a really good coach. Like, yeah, no shit. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah,
But
it's just kind
maybe
of
in that,
yeah, it's kind of crazy.
it
Like
makes the
everybody's
greatness.
like kind of so past it because he had a couple bad performances, and then he literally has the best performance in I mean, the second best ADCC performance in ADCC history, without argument. I mean,
Right.
Hodger and him, those are the two best performances in ADCC history, statistically and in my opinion overall. And now everybody's talking about how great of a grappler he is and how he's the one to beat Gordon. But, 3 months ago, we were talking about how him and Atos are past it, how, the game is moving on and all these other things, So it's just a little bit ludicrous. It's a little bit crazy to hear the way these people talk or the way the media tries to spin or do these things. But, Pedigo now is not a new team on the block. Daisy Fresh came out as a series in 2018, 2019. We're 5 years removed from that. We're only having better results. Where the fuck was Pixley 5 years ago? He wasn't even training. You know what I mean? And now he's beating Marigali and making it to day two of ADCC and his first ADCC
Yeah.
ever. I mean, that's absurd. That's crazy.
It's
My
incredible.
first
It's
ADCC,
incredible.
I got fourth at 77 kilos. Now my third ADCC, I got third in the open. So our results are
Yeah.
getting better.
Yeah. I think to some degree, maybe it's a positive. Sometimes a chip on the shoulder just makes people work harder.
And
Like,
it doesn't it'll never change the effort we put in. Because
right.
it's not really the reason why we do this shit. It doesn't wake me up in the morning and motivate me because I have, this many more people than I had yesterday liking my post or supporting me
No,
or blah blah
no.
blah.
You
It's
wouldn't be where you were. You wouldn't be
exactly.
where
It's
you
never the
are if
thing
that.
that
Yeah.
changes, but it's always good to see and it's always good to be surrounded by people and run around point to what you said earlier is to be around those hard-nosed, hard-working people that you get up every day,
Yeah.
you punch in, you go to work, and you put your head down and you do your shit. And you don't make excuses, you don't cry, you don't complain, you don't do any of it. You continue to work. You don't know when you're going to be thrown a bone. You don't know when you're going to be called up for the biggest match of your life or when the success is coming, but you wake up every day and you work like it's the next day, and
Yeah.
that's the thing that we have as a team and that's the thing that we have as athletes. And that's what propels us that even if we get overlooked, even if we aren't at the level of where other people are seeing the other teams and the other members of these teams on the world stage, that we will get there one day, and we
Yeah.
100% will get there one day because we'll wake up and we'll go to work every single day and we'll do what needs to be done to do it. And after a while and after a certain amount of results and a certain amount of success, it becomes undeniable. At this point
Yeah.
now, you can't deny things. And even when you see grapplers nowadays, when people want to talk about them, there's things that grapplers have that are undeniable. You know what I mean? Like the titles that you have are going to be undeniable. They're your results, your championship, your titles, your rankings. It's undeniable. That's real. Those are the things that are going to live on for the rest of history.
Well, I'm excited to see this match come up. You and Andy Varela, you get to put all that on the table and potentially walk away with yet another notch in your belt that cements further that you deserve to be exactly where you are. But it's fun to watch you guys who come out of that camp because of everything you just said. It's the work ethic is eminent, right? You see it in all of you guys, and you, Couch, Pixley, everyone that's coming out of there. It's fun when you step on the match because it's no bullshit. It's hard work and it's rolling your sleeves up and getting ready to go. So I wish you the absolute best of luck, man. I'll be rooting for you, of course, always. It's great to see you when you step in this case, in somewhat of an octagon. But thank you so much for coming on, Dante, and I wish you the best in competition, strength training, conditioning, staying healthy, all that kind of stuff.
I appreciate you, man. I love the podcast and I love coming on here and talking, especially before the UFC match. I think it's great to discuss the new opportunities and the new opponents and the new potential of everything that's going on. So I appreciate you giving me the time, man.
Hey, friends, Abe here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and sticking around to the very end. If you want to support it, leave a 5-star review on Spotify or check out www.maynideapodcast.com. Join the mailing list and stay up to date on all things The Main Idea, from future guests, sponsorship opportunities, products I'm using to help me perform at my best, invites to ask me anything, and any upcoming pertinent information to the show. I cannot do this show without you. It is literally why I show up each week and put these episodes together. So thank you from the bottom of my heart from being part of the community. I hope you have a great day.